Hello, everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Akin. I'm your host, Olivia Akin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We will give you real-life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top-notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Jennifer Garrett. Jennifer is the founder and owner of the company Elevate Your Hustle, LLC. Elevate Your Hustle consults with corporations to develop growth strategies, enhance branding, digital marketing programs, and more. In addition to owning this company, Jennifer hosts the podcast Move the Ball, has published 2 books called Move the Ball and Dominate the Game. She is also currently serving in the Army as a lawyer and has been in the Army for the past 11 years. You can find Jennifer by going to her LinkedIn at Jennifer.A.Garrett or by emailing her at jen@movetheballpodcast.com. Hello, Jen. It's fantastic having you on the show today.
Hey, Olivia. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited. So to start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Jennifer Garrett?
Yeah, that's a great question. And for me, success, that definition has certainly changed over the years. And I think it should be as we continue to evolve and grow, what's important to us changes. So for me, when I look at what success means today, it's really about living in your purpose and acting in your purpose in your career so that you're in roles that you're really connected to that purpose and so that you can make an impact in the way that you want to around you.
And I think that's great. And talking about how it has changed over time, I want to dive into that because we've talked about this and you've had an amazing journey of growth and transition over your many careers and different backgrounds. Jen, like I said, we've talked about this more, but I want our listeners to know something really interesting about you, that you have 7, and guys, I mean 7 different degrees. What are all your different degrees, as well as why have you decided to get those degrees?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first, the degrees are, I have 2 bachelors in engineering. The first is in electrical engineering and then biomedical engineering. I have an MBA. I went to law school after that because I wasn't done with school. And then I also have a master's in communication and leadership. After law school, if you're like just still ready to go to school some more, not many people are, but if you are, you can get a Master of Law. You have to have a JD to get it. And so I have 2 Master of Laws. One is in tax and the other is in business transactions, which is like SEC regulation, mergers and acquisitions, corporate structure, that kind of a thing. So those are the degrees. So why? A lot of people ask me, well, did you not know what you wanted to do? Is that why you kept going to school? And for me, I mean, there's a couple of things there. One, I love to learn. I love academia. I do not think that you should only be learning in the academic environment. We should be learning each and every day. But for me, I really enjoyed that structure and that method of learning. Now, I also worked in companies that were very generous with their education programs. So I leveraged that benefit to be able to go to school. So if I didn't have that educational assistance, I probably wouldn't have gone and gotten as many degrees. But for me too, I was really focused on how do I differentiate myself? So we talk about what does success mean? Then success to me was get to the Fortune 500 C-suite. And so to do that, I knew that I had to do things differently than other people so that I could set myself apart, right, and make an impression. And for me, having these other perspectives through getting these educational degrees, in addition to the different roles that I had, I thought was a way that I could set myself apart from other people. So that was part of my playbook to really stand out. And because, like I said, I had that educational tuition assistance, I was like, you know what, let's make it happen. So that was part of my playbook.
And I love how you talk about, sometimes depending on what your goals, you can't do everything the cookie cutter ways, one might say, of like, okay, this is the path. You have to understand what your goals are and then understand, hey, I might have to do something that's not the norm to set myself apart so I can reach that goal. And for you, it was the education. And like you said, definitely helping that you were working with great organizations that had that assistance and going and to that a little bit more, like you said, you were working full time at the time, doing these different education programs in a high demanding industries and what that time might be looking like, as well as you're a mom of 5 wonderful kids. So your life is definitely busy. For you, how have you handled that busyness and being present in everything you're doing while learning these different degrees and doing different things that you're passionate about and achieving your goals?
Sure. It's craziness at times. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, because people will be like, oh my gosh, you've got everything together. And I'm like, life happens. I'm not immune to that. And so it's really about just being, there's a few things in there. One, I'm very organized and I plan out what I want to get done every single day. Secondly, I also know that things are going to happen on some days days are not going to go as planned. Right. And so it's about having the discipline to be aware of, okay, this isn't going the right way, but I'm going to focus on what I can control so I can still make this day an impactful one, no matter what has happened today. I mean, there are some days you start out, I've got 5 kids. Like you mentioned, they span a 20-year gap. So I've got some that are adults, I've got some that are kids. And, I could get a phone call. I got a text this morning from one of my daughters that kind of got me focused on something else that I hadn't planned on doing this morning. But you just adjust and you adapt as you need to, but you remember what is important for you to get done every single day and you make it happen. And look, at the end of the day, if you don't get it all done, that's okay too. And I think it's important to give yourself that grace to say, you know what? It's okay. I'm going to do this tomorrow or later this week, and not beat yourself up over that, because things happen that are outside of our control. But if you can just maintain that discipline to focus on the things that you can control, and you've got your plan, you adjust the things you need to, you reprioritize. But for me, that's really kind of how I've gone through. And I think the other thing too is, when you look at, and I work with a lot of high performers and high performing organizations, you can throw those people and those teams into any situation and they will figure it out, because they've got the confidence that they're going to figure it out. Now, confidence doesn't mean I have all the answers or I know what to do 100% of the time, but it's the belief that you're going to figure it out, and you know that you will put together a plan and pull in the right people so that you can achieve the objective. So for me, that's kind of my thing. It's like, you know what? I don't know if this is always the right step, but I'm going to trust the decision that I'm making and I'll figure it out.
And I love that. And I think you brought up some amazing points there of having that confidence to be like, okay, this is what I'm doing, but also understanding life happens, whether it's to ourselves or someone on our team. We have to understand that not everything is always going to go as planned. And then, like you said, really just look back and be like, what are the key goals for the day? Regroup, reorganize yourself so that you can do that, because it is just as important to, in the midst of chaos or things changing, instead of breaking down, being like, okay, I have to regroup. I'm taking care of this now. What do I have to move around, or how do I have to move it around accordingly? For you, in those moments of things changing and reshifting, how do you refocus yourself or transition in the same note? How do you transition maybe from doing a task into that personal life and making sure everything else is fully balanced for you?
Sure. There's a couple of things there. One, it's about being fully present first in whatever it is you're looking to do. Like I said, I plan, so I know what I want to get done, both from a professional standpoint and a business standpoint, as well as when it comes to my family for the week. And so, it's just maintaining that awareness of what it is that you want to get done and saying no to the other things that are not as important for the day. That's a thing that is hard for people to either actually say the word no, or to in their mind say, no, I'm not going to do this today. And so once you condition yourself to be able to do that, it's easier to do, but it's an adjustment for some people. And I mean, even for me, like my phone this morning, I was getting so many text messages. I might see them come in. I'm not going to respond to them until I'm ready to, because I'm in the middle of something. And we are so conditioned to react right away and, just respond back. And that's the problem, because then you get sucked into that thing and you're in this conversation with someone, or you're posting on something, and then you've wasted 20, 30 minutes because you've now been diverted to something else. So for me, again, it's really just maintaining that discipline on these are the priorities for the day. Anything else that happens, I will handle as I'm able to. And if something comes up that's more important, then again, I just, readjust. But for me, it's really about how do you integrate? And I know we'll talk about my books later in the show, but there's a chapter in my latest book called Manage the Game Clock, which in sports, you've got a set number of minutes that you're looking to play a game against your opponent. In life, that game clock for me is a 24-hour day. So you've got 1,440 minutes that you're looking at. How do I manage these minutes effectively to be able to accomplish what I'm looking to do? And when you realize the value of every single minute, and I tell people to think of it this way. If you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else, right? So everything that you commit time to is taking you away from something else. So it's really about making sure you're spending time on the things that are important for you for the day.
And I think that's really important to understand. And I love the way you said it. When you take your time and understand this is how many minutes, hours, I have in the day. There's only so much time in a day. Like you said, 24 hours. That's all we got in the day. You can't move that clock to be any longer. Right. So what are you doing in that time? And, having the awareness that by saying yes to something else, you are saying no to getting other things done or spending time with other people. And I think that's important. And, when you're organized like Jen is and has those things and making the priorities, what ends up happening with individuals, and Jen, you can talk about this, is you end up getting everything done for the most part in a less time. Again, there's some projects that will probably take longer, you have to adjust. But when you create those time blocks, you have to be focused on that thing that's going on. And so you end up being more efficient with your time. And then sometimes by the end of the day, you're like, wow, I have this time back. I can spend some time on myself, or, I want to spend time with this person. So let me, whatever they have to do on their list, let me help them, or let me do this. And it creates that nice grace period for you as well to kind of regroup when you realize, hey, I haven't been procrastinating. Everything got done, and it got done sometimes in a less time consuming period.
For sure. And I think it's important too, when you're scheduling time, that you're also blocking time out for yourself, just to have that mental reset, to do something fun, to get some physical exercise. So getting all of those things into your schedule and planning it is very important, because the likelihood of you doing it is that much more if you have it in your schedule.
Right. And I totally agree. I think, like you said, it's really the importance of making sure that everything you want to do, including that, mental reset, that physical reset, whatever it might be, the things that bring you joy are built into your schedule too, because then that refreshes you. That makes you feel like, okay, I can keep going, because the burnout is real. And yes, if you don't take the time for yourself to regroup, reorganize your thoughts, you're going to hit a time of burnout and not knowing the direction. Is kind of the theory in a way that burnout is like the wave that just consumes you in the water. You're at the beach, you're swimming in the waves, and all of a sudden a massive wave comes and just hits you. That's kind of in a way like the burnout. It hits you, and now you have to get back to the surface. Well, don't allow the wave to hit you.
For sure. And one thing that I just wanted to say too is some people that are watching this and listening might be thinking, well, that's easy to say no for you, Jen, but you work for yourself. But I work for a company, so I can't just tell my boss or my teammates no. Well, this is what you can do, is you can say, you know what, I've got these things that I'm working on. If you want me to do that, these things will have to wait. So let's talk about the priority. Or you can say, when do you really need to get that done? Because I'm consumed with blah, blah, blah. And can it wait till Friday or next week? And so, because people always want everything ASAP. And so, but do they really need it immediately? Oftentimes they don't. And if they do, different conversation about, okay, then something else has to give, right? And you talk through that, and maybe you get your boss's help for pushing back on something, but there is a way to say no without being viewed as a non-team player.
And I think that's really important. And I love that you brought that up, because you see that a lot in organizations of just not understanding how to have the conversation. And when you get to a point where you can have that conversation, or you go, you know what, it is time for me to use my voice and kind of be like, this is what's on my plate. What you sometimes end up realizing is a lot of people don't understand what's on your plate.
Exactly.
Or they don't realize how long it takes. So having that conversation, even with someone as your manager, as they're maybe not fully aware of your day-to-day tasks or how long a task takes, when you have that conversation, it sometimes ends up being very beneficial, because then they understand, working with other departments, how might things need to be changed to make the flow easier, the workflow easier on you, and what those deadlines can be. Because when you don't understand the moving pieces or what someone has going on, it's harder for you to understand why something might be taking longer and not having the right checkpoints or deadlines in place. And that can be crucial, not just to, scheduling yourself, but again, that burnout, again, that teamwork and communication, they all end up going hand in hand with each other.
Completely agree.
For you, I want to dive more, like you had said earlier, into your books. So you've published 2 books in addition to all your different degrees and your career paths. And I don't know where you find the time. We're very similar in the way we're able to manage our time. But you've published 2 books, Move the Ball as well as Dominate the Game. What made you decide to write those books? And they're both sports analogy oriented, which is amazing because we all love sports, right? But what made you also write it in that way, and you knowing that was the time to do it?
Yeah, for me, I've always had a passion for writing ever since I was a kid. I've always had a passion for sports. So being able to combine the two in these books has been fantastic for me. And as I mentioned earlier, when I talked about my definition of success, it's really about being able to impact people in a way that you want. And for me, it's always been about how do I use sports to get people excited and motivated to go after what's important to them. We all have a different definition of success. We all have different things that make us happy and feel fulfilled. And so I wanted to give people with Move the Ball, how can you, through the lens of sports, get a foundation to help you move the ball and go after whatever it is that you're looking to achieve in your life. And that's not just from a business standpoint or for a career standpoint. It's also about just holistically in everything that you do. So that was Move the Ball, which was written 10 years ago. It's hard to believe it's been 10 years since the first edition was published. And then Dominate the Game was building on that. They are exclusive and you don't have to read Move the Ball to appreciate Dominate the Game, but they do build upon one another. Whereas Move the Ball is really the foundation. Dominate the Game is, okay, let's not just move the ball every single day. Let's really excel and get to that next level and be elite at the craft that you are doing. And so playing your game, as I tell people, at the best level, at the highest level you can. So it gives people more advanced level things on how they can get to that next level.
For you, writing Move the Ball and then seeing the impact it was having on other individuals, what was that like for you? And then what, with Move the Ball, did you try to take to really elevate your own game? As once it was on paper, you're like, wow, I might have not thought about it this way until I wrote it. Or now talking to people, I see their things in a little bit different perspective as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, the most rewarding thing about the books is knowing the impact that I'm making through them. And so people will reach out and they'll share their stories. Or I've had someone that reached out to me, this was a few years ago, and she said, I've reached the lowest point in my life. And I just bought your book and I'm ready to turn things around. And like that from a complete stranger, is something that makes everything I do worth it, to know that you can impact someone on that level. I had another guy that had read, someone had done an interview on me, an article, and he had read it and he sent me a note and he was like, I don't remember exactly how much he weighed, but he's like, I've got this big weight loss goal and I'm changing my lifestyle. And he's like, I'm going to make sure that I move the ball every day. I've got a long ways to go, but I'm going to keep the ball moving. And like, just to have him embrace, that phrase and that mentality, again, you just never know what people are going to get behind. And to know that people have adopted this move the ball philosophy is pretty incredible. So what have I done differently? I mean, I think I've been able to connect with so many great people. And I mean, as leaders, we're always learning and growing from other people as well. And so there's so many other people through my podcast or just work that I've gotten to interact with and hear their stories and their guidance. And so things that they've told me about how they move the ball or what they do has impacted things that I do. I mean, we should all be looking at how do we adapt and evolve and do things differently so we can continue to get to that next level for us. So for me, it's been great just being able to learn from others and incorporate that into my routine as well.
What are some of the things that you've now incorporated by learning from others? Because like you said, learning from others is so important and we all continue to grow and we should all have that open mindset. So what are some of the, I guess, big impacts that through these experiences, you've kind of been like, wow, you know, as you said, Move the Ball came out 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So looking back even 5 years, how has things changed for you?
Yeah, I think the power of no is a big one for me. As someone that was really motivated early in my career, got to Fortune 50 senior leadership in my 20s, I was always saying yes to everything. Why? Because I wanted people to know I brought value. I'm here. I'm a resource. I'm here to help. Right. And so the problem with that is we talk about burnout. You get overwhelmed and you're exhausted all the time. Not that I'm not tired now, but I do sleep. It's important to sleep. Get 7 to 8 hours if you can. But for me, I really say no to the things that I don't feel like align with the purpose for the day or the week. That doesn't mean it's not a yes later, but I'm very big on saying no because I'm mindful of every single minute. And what am I willing to sacrifice by saying yes to somebody? So I think that's important when you realize someone said to me, he was an NFL player, wide receiver, 9 years in the league. He was like, think of it as every time you say yes, you're pulling out your wallet and you're giving them money because that is what you are doing with your time. So that's something that I've really been mindful of from there. I mean, the other thing is just the importance of showing up every single day. I mean, I think I had been doing that, but now I'm more mindful of, okay, how are you going to show up? And somebody said to me too, this was last year, he said, you know, if you don't put yourself out there, you can never be found. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so profound. It's simple. But when you think about it, if you don't show up to places or online or wherever, people are not going to see you or know you, and then you will have less opportunities because you're not showing up. And so I think for me, that's a big thing, especially as a business owner. I got tired of being on social media. It's exhausting. And then I took a break and I was like, you know what? I have to show up so people can hear me, can be impacted. Other people can know about what I'm doing. So hopefully other business opportunities will come, but it's really about showing up every single day. And so the second book is called Dominate the Game, but the subtitle is How Life Changes When You Show Up. And when you do show up the right way, you do achieve the things that you're looking to achieve.
And I love that. And the transition into, okay, now we've moved the ball. And like we say, whether it's in that football arena and you're moving it by a yard line at a time. And sometimes it's not, you know, throwing the ball and going 50 yards. It's taking that ball and throwing it 10 yards. You know, we watch it in games so many times that one play that continues to build on itself over time ends up giving you the touchdown. It isn't just that crazy throw that, oh, we caught it in the end zone and now we've scored. It's those little plays can be just as pivotal to that one massive play to you winning your own game. So I love how we then go into, with your second book, Dominate the Game, when now you have moved the ball and now you want to dominate at that level. For you, what was it like writing that in that period of your time, as now everyone as well was getting into move the ball and really feeling the impact your first book had made?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've always wanted to write another book. So right after I published Move the Ball, I was like, oh, let's work on the next one. And then I got busy and I was like, no, I'll get to it. So it's been a while since I got to that second book. But for me, it was really about, I wanted to serve people and give them another piece of content to make an impact. And so for me, it was like, okay, well, what is it that I want to write on, right? And so I thought it just made sense to build upon moving the ball and giving people kind of advanced level concepts, if you will, to continue to grow and be where they want to be in their career and in their life. And so for me, I mean, it was challenging to come up with a title. For one, it's like, okay, you want to think for people that are considering writing a book, you need to think about what books are already out there. I'm a branding person. So you're trying to build a brand, you got to differentiate yourself, and you don't want to have something that is so close to something that's already out there. So we went through different iterations of what do we call this thing? What is the subtitle? I love where we landed because I think it just makes sense and aligns very well. And from a messaging standpoint, I get to put content around the theme of let's not just move the ball, but let's dominate. So I think it flows nicely. But there was a number of different considerations before we got to that title. But it's been fantastic. I mean, it's another way to serve and make an impact and help people. And really, for me, that's what success is all about. It's about how I can help other people. I think I've done a lot of things that I can put on my resume that are great and impressive, but it's really for me about the impact I get to make just for other people.
And I love that. And I love how you say, branding is important and differentiating yourself. For you, when writing Dominate the Game, what was one of the things that still sticks with you that you can share that really helps you dominate the game?
I mean, aside from managing the game clock, like we talked about, and having your plan and executing on that and showing up. So showing up is an important part. I think the other part that is very, very important is calling the timeouts when you need to. And it's not just about taking a break because you're tired. It's about taking time to think, taking time to plan, taking time to strategize as well, in addition to the mental and physical resets we talked about earlier. I mean, I think as people that are looking to get to that next level, it's not just about tactically executing on the things that you're already doing. It's looking bigger picture and what are things that you should be doing, what new things, what new collaborations, what other business products, can you put out into the marketplace or services, but you need to think those things through. So for me, just really being strategic and deliberate and making sure that everything that I say yes to is on point with where I want to go. I think as entrepreneurs too, it can be very tempting to chase everything that shows interest in you because you think there's an opportunity to make $1 or hopefully many dollars, right? And the problem with that is many of them don't pan out and you've just wasted all this time and energy and effort. And even if they do, again, we only have 24 hours in the day. So do you want to spend your time on that thing? And is it consistent with your brand? And I think a lot of people lose sight of that.
And I want to go more into the fact that I love and that you've continuously brought up is making the impact, right? Mm-hmm. And for you, you have always, through whatever you're doing, trying to make the difference, not just in your life, but in others. And that being said, one thing you have decided to also do is your podcast, Move the Ball. And for you, what made you decide after your book to go into the podcast world and do this podcast? And what has that journey been like, as well as being able to talk to people on this platform and have those different conversations?
Yeah, it's been an incredible journey, and it's one that I originally said no to. So I had people that were putting a bug in my ear, Jen, you should start a podcast. And I'm like, no, because there's so many out there. How am I going to differentiate myself? And so I just didn't really see it as a value added activity at the time. And so probably about 6-8 months went by, people kept mentioning it. And I'm like, you know what? Let's give it a go. And it's been fantastic to be able to bring conversations to my audience that are hopefully helping them to move the ball. But the stories that I've been able to share through my conversations with the guests or what the guests have shared have been amazing. I mean, I get so much value from having those conversations. It's not just about about what we bring to the audience, but I mean, I get so much from them too. We're in season 4 of the show. We've done over 280 episodes, and I'm glad that I finally said yes to doing it. And from a business standpoint, I mean, it's been a great way to continue to grow my brand as well, because people can hear that content, and that content is always out there. So whether it's an episode I did in season 1, people still listen to those, but it's really a great way to get people to connect with you and who you are and your message and your story, and to continue to grow your tribe as well. So it's been a really, really good part of my journey the last 4 years.
And I couldn't agree more, and there's a few things I want to discuss there. The fact of, the podcast world, a lot of people sometimes be like, what can you get out of it as a host? And there's so much, there's so much reward there that I think sometimes people miss. It is those healthy, those in-depth conversations like you and I had. I was actually talking about this morning. They're like, what is your favorite thing? And I'm like, I love having my guests on. It's not about sharing their journey and having amazing conversations like we do and like we're doing right now, but it's also the, conversations we get to have that then get me thinking for the day or might change my perspective, because when you can have that open dialogue and really get into the nitty-gritty and learn about people's different experiences and how they work through things and the things they might have, added to their backpack or taken out, really can help you maybe look at things differently or challenge your mindset, or might be something 6 months from now, you go, oh, you know what? Jen and I were talking about that. And you know what? Now's the time. That's coming full circle back. And like you said, it is so amazing watching the growth, as well as knowing like people might listen to your episode and then go back and go, oh, I love this. This was so rewarding, and start going back to those older episodes. And it's so cool to see like the fact it's there, and the fact that because it's relatable and people are enjoying it, they do go back no matter how long it's been and listen to those episodes is awesome. And the other thing that I love that you talked about was the fact that originally the podcast was a no, and really shows that, one, you can change your mind on things. Just because you say no today does not mean it cannot be a yes down the line. But you knew at that time it wasn't a fit. And that is just as important, to realize that in that moment, it is not a fit. So you have to say no, but keep an open mind. And especially if it something keeps getting brought up in conversation, maybe down the road, it is important to regroup and go, let me take a different look. It doesn't always have to be no forever. And the vice versa can happen. Just because you say yes today does not lock that thing in for a yes forever. You can reevaluate and evaluate your time and your passions and say, it was a great journey, but at this point I have to stop and I have to regroup and I have to say no to this opportunity as well.
Completely agree. I mean, I think that it's important that as our lives change, we remember that our priorities change. And so we might be saying yes to something now, but then it's a no down the road, or the opposite is true. And so having that open mind, I think, is very important. And just being aware too of what's important to you and what your purpose is, because that purpose changes, or it can change depending again on what happens in life. I mean, for me, again, my original goal was to be a Fortune 500 CEO, hopefully, but in the C-suites. And that changed after my dad passed away very unexpectedly, not because I wasn't happy with that path, but I realized that I just had a different focus afterwards, which was to make an impact, a bigger impact in a different way, and to leave a legacy through this whole Move the Ball movement.
Well, and I definitely think you've made that impact, and people are definitely continuously moving the ball. And I'm so excited to see where that impact continues to grow. Jen, how can people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, check out the podcast, please. Would love for you to have a listen to it. You can email me at jen@movetheballpodcast.com. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so feel free to follow and, send me a message there. You can send me an email. It doesn't cost you anything, even if we're not, first level connections. So always happy to have people reach out there. You can go to my website also, which has a sports reference. It's getinsidethehuddle.com. Would love to hear from you. If I can be a resource, or if something that I've said or done has made an impact, please share.
Thank you, Jen, for all of your insight today.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show. There's one other thing I wanted to mention when we were talking about kind of redirecting, or, no's, and just kind of planning out our days and things not going the way as planned. Sometimes things don't go the way as planned. Other times we're told no by somebody else, and people view that as rejection. But that rejection, people always talk about, is a redirection to something different. The same thing when something doesn't go our way, that is like the world saying no. And so it's just a redirection of our effort and our time. And we just need to be aware of that. So we're not stuck in this moment of being angry or some other negative emotion. You got to let that stuff go. As they say in the sports world, you got to let that play go and focus on the next one. So I think that's important as well. And then the other thing I just wanted to share about the podcast piece is one thing that I've really enjoyed from it is the ability to network with other people, with the conversations that I've had with my guests. It's opened up my relationships and I've had connections with people I never thought I would ever be connected with, from NFL players and coaches to CEOs that were on Undercover Boss as an example. And so the reason I bring that up is I think we should all be focused on how are we networking with other people, whether you're a podcast host or not. That's not a criteria to network. Everybody should be looking at how do they expand their network with good quality people and true authentic relationships. And so that is one way that I've been able to achieve success in my career, whether it's in Fortune 50 or as an entrepreneur. So I would just encourage other people to really start thinking about, are you putting the time and effort into building your network?
And I think that's really important, is really understanding, are you putting that time, that energy? Because like moving the ball, you should be moving the ball on your network and making it a community, and that growth, and really understanding their in-depth connections. And one of the amazing things about that is, like you said, Jen, you can really get to connect with people you never thought you would be able to connect with. And you can really build lasting relationships within your network that can be pivotal to your own growth, and you might not even realize it. A few of our key takeaways from today's conversation is focus on what you can control to make an impact on your day. Understand what you can control and the impact you can have on your day, as well as those things that you might not be able to control that have the impact, and how you can adjust accordingly. As well as, probably one of my favorite number stats we have today is 1,440 minutes in a day. Understand it down to the minute and think about it from that perspective. You know, sometimes we think about things from a bird's eye view, but when you get down to that, eyeglass view, you really understand how precious your time can be, and it will help you decide how you want to spend that time. As well as, you can impact a complete stranger. Think about that. With the book that Jen wrote, Move the Ball, she started impacting and seeing the impact she had on complete strangers. You never know the impact you can have on someone. And that's the importance of being kind and empathetic and understanding at the end of the day that we're all going through things. And, that one act of kindness can really change someone's day and make an impact, or then end up changing the direction of what they're doing or just the way they think. As well as, if you never show up, you'll never be seen. I think it's really important to understand the importance of being present and being there, because the one thing you will do by hurting yourself by not even walking through the door is no one will ever see you. And then you'll be wasting that potential great connection, that potential great networking, that potential great opportunity that you have for yourself. As well as, one of the last things Jen had mentioned that I really love, rejection is just a redirection. Whether it's you saying no and redirecting yourself, or someone saying no to you, and that can lead to a redirection and you finding your path. For Jen, for example, it was saying no, to the podcast down originally, but then keeping the open mind and redirecting later on, and the impact that has made on her, as well as the decision to leave corporate and redirecting to her business. Sometimes we say no to ourselves, but also sometimes others say no to us. So when we understand that rejection can be hard, and we should all absorb those feelings in the moment, but redirect yourself, and there is probably a great door and opportunity and play that is down the road as well. This was a great episode with our top-notch guest, Jennifer Garrett. Thank you for listening, and have a successful day.